Among the green hills of Delaware, just a few miles from the noisy highways, stands a wall. This is not just a fence. It is a 9-foot-high stone scar that stretches for hundreds of meters, cutting the landscape in half. If you come closer, you can notice a strange, ominous gleam in the old masonry. Legend has it that 100 years ago, the owner of this place ordered thousands of sharp shards of broken glass to be embedded in the top of the wall. Why? Not to protect from thieves. This man had so much money that theft seemed a minor nuisance to him. No, this glass was intended for people with the same last name as him, for his brothers, cousins, and former friends. This wall was built not to preserve wealth, but to preserve a broken heart. Behind this wall lies one of the most majestic and at the same time saddest palaces in America, the Nemours estate. 77 rooms filled with gold, marble, and silence. Gardens that rival Versailles in scale. A place where every stone screams of love and every corridor whispers of betrayal. We are used to thinking that the DuPont family's success story is a boring chronicle of chemical plants and bank accounts. But the story of Nemours is not about chemistry. It is the story of a man who owned millions but would have died in poverty just to hold the hand of that one whom the whole world called a fallen woman. Who was this man who built his own Versailles on land soaked in gunpowder and hatred? His name was Alfred Irénée DuPont. And at the beginning of the 20th century, he was the black sheep of America's most powerful dynasty. Imagine a man who looks not like a slick Wall Street banker, but like the hero of an adventure novel. One eye covered by a patch or glass prosthesis, the result of an explosion during a hunt, although malicious tongues whispered about a duel. He heard poorly, but saw through falsehood perfectly. He loved music more than money, and his dogs more than his relatives. Alfred was born in a palace, but his hands were always covered in black powder. Unlike his cousins, who preferred clean offices, Alfred grew up in workshops where any spark could turn a man to dust. In 1902, it was this one-eyed rebel who saved the family empire from a shameful sale to competitors. When the family elders decided to sell the business for $12 million, Alfred slammed his fist on the table. He said he would not allow the ancestors' legacy to go under the hammer, and together with 2 cousins bought out the company. It would seem that this was the beginning of a great friendship and triumph. But power does strange things to people. Just a few years passed, and those he had saved turned against him. Why? Because Alfred committed an unforgivable sin. He dared to fall in love with the wrong woman. In the upper society of the early 20th century, there were rules stricter than in the army. You don't divorce. You don't marry divorces. You don't mix the pure blood of capital with scandal. Alfred broke all of them at once. He left his first wife and children for Alicia Bradford, a woman whom the DuPont family considered a disaster. Alicia was beautiful, smart, and worst of all, she was the ex-wife of Alfred's secretary. For the puritanical DuPont clan, this was a declaration of war. Alfred stopped being invited to receptions. People turned away from him on the street. His name was crossed out from guest lists. And then Alfred made a decision. If the world doesn't accept his queen, he will build his own world for her, one that America had never seen before. In 1909, in the midst of this social blockade, work boiled on a hill near Wilmington. Hundreds of workers, dozens of architects, ships loaded with French stone and Italian marble headed to the estate. Alfred planned to build a house that would shut the mouths of all his enemies with its grandeur. A house that would say, "Look what I achieved without you." But behind this outward pomp hid a deep, painful vulnerability. The wall of broken glass grew upward, separating the lovers from condemning glances. But Alfred didn't know one thing. He was building a fortress for happiness that was already doomed. Fate was preparing a blow for him from which neither marble, nor millions of dollars, nor a 9-foot fence would protect. While New York architects were drawing plans for magnificent colonnades, a figure already stood in the shadows, ready to turn this triumph into a mausoleum. Who could have known that this palace would become the backdrop for the shortest and most tragic fairy tale in the history of American tycoons? To understand how one man dared to challenge his entire family, you need to look at his hands. Alfred Irénée DuPont's hands were rarely clean. He was born in 1864, but his childhood was not like a fairy tale about a golden boy. He lost his parents early and grew up amid the roar of crushers and the acrid smell of sulfur at the gunpowder mills along the Brandywine River. While his cousins learned dances and etiquette, Alfred learned to survive. He knew chemistry not from textbooks, but from explosions that periodically shook the valley, taking the lives of workers. It was there, amid danger and black dust, that his tough philosophy formed. Life is not a gift, but a mechanism that needs to be tuned. Alfred was a genius of mechanics and a work fanatic. He started from the very bottom, working as a simple apprentice. This gave him what other clan members lacked: unconditional respect from ordinary people and absolute understanding of how wealth is created. He saw money not as a goal, but as a tool, like a wrench or a steam hammer. But his true talent manifested not in the workshop, but at the negotiating table, when the family's history approached the edge of the abyss. In 1902, the family elders, tired of management and frightened by the death of the company head, Eugene DuPont, decided to sell the business. The price was ridiculous for an empire of such scale, $12 million. The buyer was to be the main competitor, the Laughlin and Rand Company. For Alfred, this was tantamount to selling his homeland. When he learned about the impending deal, he burst into the board meeting. His argument was simple and bold. "I will buy the company." The elders laughed. Alfred didn't have 12 million. He had only a share in the business and ambitions. But he had a plan that today would be called a masterpiece of corporate raiding. He teamed up with two cousins, charismatic T. Coleman and cold financier Pierre S. DuPont. Alfred proposed a scheme in which they didn't spend a single cent in cash. They issued shares of a new corporation and paid the sellers with them, using the company's own assets as collateral. It was a bluff multiplied by brilliant calculation. The deal went through. The three cousins became the new kings of the gunpowder empire. Alfred, as the most experienced production man, took the position of vice president and set about modernizing the factories. Under his leadership, efficiency soared to the heavens. He felt like a winner. He had saved the legacy. He was rich. He was needed. But in this triumvirate, the seed of discord was already germinating. Alfred was a man of the last century, straightforward, rough, valuing personal loyalty above corporate ethics. His cousin Pierre was a man of the future, a ruthless calculator for whom numbers were more important than family ties. Alfred didn't notice how his role as savior began to irritate his partners. He thought their alliance was unbreakable, forged by blood and gunpowder. He didn't understand that in the world of big money, gratitude is the most perishable commodity. While Alfred was modernizing machines and improving conditions for workers, Pierre and Coleman were building a complex financial web in which there would soon be no place for the simple-hearted engineer. Alfred won the battle for the company, but he didn't yet know that this victory would become the prologue to his most terrifying personal war. He was ready for explosions at the factory, but completely unprepared for the explosion in his own home. Alfred was a man of passion, and this passion found its outlet in the woman who turned his world upside down. Alicia Bradford. She was not a typical social debutante. She was smart, beautiful, and bore the stigma of a divorced woman with a child. In those times, that was a social death sentence. But for Alfred, she became heir. In 1907, ignoring all warnings, he married her. This was not just a wedding, it was a challenge. The DuPont family, led by prim aunts and calculating Pierre, responded with icy silence. Almost no one came to their wedding. Gifts were returned. The doors of Wilmington's best homes slammed in the newlyweds' faces. Alfred found himself in a paradoxical situation. He was one of America's richest men, a co-owner of a giant corporation. But in his own city he became an outcast. His cousins looked at him as if he were crazy for putting feelings above the clan's reputation. But they underestimated his stubbornness. Alfred decided that if the old world rejected his queen, he would create a new one for her. He wouldn't knock on closed doors. He would build a palace compared to which his relatives' houses would seem like miserable shacks. Thus, the idea of Nemours was born. It was not supposed to be just a house. Alfred turned to his French roots, to the era of kings and absolute power. He hired the New York architects Carrère and Hastings, creators of the public library building, and gave them carte blanche. He wanted to transplant Versailles onto American soil. The walls were to be made of limestone to shine in the sun, and the style was to scream of impeccable taste, which, in the family's opinion, Alfred lacked. Every column, every arch was conceived as a slap in the face to those who whispered behind his back. It was a fusion of the new world's capital and the old world's aesthetics, born from love and a thirst for revenge. Construction began, and the noise of the construction site drowned out the whisper of gossips. When the heavy wrought iron gates opened in 1910, the few chosen ones allowed inside froze in amazement. Nemours did not resemble a cozy family nest. It was an architectural declaration of independence, carved from limestone. 77 rooms, 47,000 square feet of absolute symmetry. Alfred-Irénée DuPont, whom relatives considered a rough engineer, created a space of such refined beauty that it silenced even the most malicious critics. The house was designed in the style of Louis XVI, imitating the Petit Trianon at Versailles, but surpassing it in technical equipment. The first thing that struck a visitor was the reception hall. The floor was laid with black and white marble slabs, creating a hypnotic rhythm that led the eye to the grand staircase. Light poured through huge windows, reflecting in crystal chandeliers, each of which cost a fortune. But there was no sense of warmth here. It was the realm of cold perfection. Alfred, having lost his hearing, valued visual harmony above auditory. The walls were adorned with tapestries that remembered the castles of French nobility, and the furniture was selected so that every chair reminded the guest, "You are in the presence of royal power, albeit of the American variety." However, the true soul of the house was hidden not in the gilding, but in the engineering details. Alfred remained a mechanic to the bone. Behind the antique panels were the latest heating and electricity systems. In the basements operated its own ice-making plant and water purification station. It was a paradox embodied in concrete and velvet. Outwardly, the house looked to the past, to the era of kings, but its heart beat to the rhythm of the industrial future. Alfred seemed to say to his family, "I honor traditions better than you, but I possess progress that is inaccessible to you." A special place was occupied by the music room. Alfred, despite his hearing problems, was a passionate musician and composer. He installed there not just a piano, but a complex system, an Aeolian organ, the pipes of which were hidden behind the walls so that the sound enveloped the listener from all sides. Here, sitting at the instrument, the tough businessman turned into a dreamer. He played for Alicia, and the vibration of the music in these walls was their secret language, inaccessible to the outside world. But the most grandiose element of the estate became the garden. Alfred ordered the creation of the Long Alley, a perspective stretching into the distance for almost a third of a mile. Along it were lined Japanese cedars and chestnuts, and at the end, as if in the focus of a telescope, rose a colonnade with a statue of Diana the Huntress. This was the largest French garden in North America. A viewer standing on the house terrace felt like the lord of the horizon. Every line, every clipped boxwood bush obeyed the master's will. This was an attempt to order the chaos that reigned in his relations with the family. The estate was filled with portraits of ancestors. In the dining room, behind a long table capable of seating dozens of guests, stern faces of the DuPont dynasty founders looked from the walls. Alfred deliberately placed them there to show he was not a renegade. He was the only true keeper of the flame. He dined under their gazes, as if proving to the dead what the living refused to acknowledge. Nemours was a golden cage built with love, but its walls were too thick to let in spontaneity. It was a house museum even during the owner's lifetime, where every vase stood in its place, and time seemed to have frozen in anticipation of catastrophe. While architects polished Nemours marble in the DuPont company's boardrooms, a drama worthy of Shakespeare's pen was unfolding. The great house, conceived as a symbol of triumph, was rapidly turning into a fortress of a besieged king. In 1915, an event occurred that finally split the clan and put Alfred before a terrible moral choice: preserve peace in the family or fight for what he considered justice. His cousin Pierre, that same cold financier, made a secret maneuver. Behind Alfred's back, he bought a huge block of shares from the third partner, T. Coleman DuPont. The deal was conducted in secret, instantly turning Pierre into the sole master of the empire. For Alfred, this was not just a business defeat. It was a knife in the back from the man he had saved and elevated to the top. Honor, the concept that Alfred did not trade in, was trampled. And here we see the dark side of our hero. Alfred did not retreat, did not reconcile. He declared war on his own blood. He sued his cousins, starting a process that the press called the Battle of the Millionaires. The family split in half. Brothers stopped speaking to sisters, parents forbade children from playing with cousins. Alfred, owner of the fairy tale Nemours, turned into an obsessed avenger. Was he right? Legally, possibly. But morally, he was burning the bridges that connected generations. The viewer should wonder, where does principle end and pride begin? Was the corporate share worth turning family dinners into a battlefield? But fate, as if punishing him for this intransigence, was preparing a blow from the other side. Nemours was built as a temple of love for Alicia. She was the only person for whom Alfred endured isolation. She was the mistress of this Versailles, its heart. But the palace walls could not protect her from the fragility of human life. In January 1920, just 10 years after the completion of the dream house, Alicia died. It happened suddenly. The woman for whom Alfred turned the world upside down left, leaving him alone amid endless corridors and gilded mirrors. Alicia's death instantly devalued everything: the millions in accounts, the court victories, and the architectural grandeur. In an instant, Nemours' 77 rooms filled with deafening silence. Imagine Alfred in those days. He is 56 years old. He is partially deaf, blind in one eye, rejected by most of his family, and now a widower. He wanders the halls where she chose every piece of furniture. He looks at the garden they planned together and sees not beauty, but a monument to his loss. His pride, his uncompromising struggle with his cousins, all of it suddenly seemed petty and meaningless against the icy breath of death. It is at this moment that the hero becomes ambiguous. We pity him, but we also see the man who built a golden cage and remained locked in it. He won wealth, but lost happiness. Nemours, conceived as a symbol of love, turned into a mausoleum. Alfred could have broken, could have taken to drink or gone to Europe to forget. But he stayed. He continued to live in the house where Alicia's ghost was in every reflection. It was his personal hell and his personal paradise at the same time. And it was here, at the bottom of despair, that his final transformation was to occur. Tragedy did not kill him. It forced him to seek new meaning that went beyond his own ego and his endless war with the DuPont name. The silence in Nemours after Alicia's death could drive one mad. Alfred, having lost his hearing and the love of his life, wandered the 77 rooms like a ghost. His famous war with his cousins suddenly lost its taste. It seemed the finale was predetermined, the lonely death of a rich outcast in a golden cage. But in 1921, the script changed. On stage came Jessie Ball, a schoolteacher from Virginia, a woman with a steel core and pragmatic mind. She became not just his third wife, but the architect of his soul. Jessie redirected Alfred's furious energy from destructive revenge to creation. If the DuPont family rejected him, he decided to become a father to the entire state. At that time in America, old age for the poor meant hunger or a humiliating poorhouse. Alfred proposed to the Delaware authorities to create a pension fund. The politicians refused, citing a lack of budget. Then Alfred did something unprecedented in US history. He took out his checkbook and said, "I will pay for everyone." He personally hired a team that found every needy elderly person in the state. Thousands of checks signed by the one-eyed rebel flew to the dilapidated homes of Delaware. The man who built the most luxurious palace now fed those who had no roof over their heads. This was a complete transformation. The wall with broken glass, which previously served as a symbol of isolation, now guarded a philanthropist whose heart opened to strangers. Under Jessie's influence, Alfred rethought the fate of Nemours as well. He realized that to own means to preserve for others. He decided that after his death, the estate would not go to relatives or to auction. He bequeathed to turn his personal Versailles into a children's hospital and public park. While his cousin Pierre accumulated millions and corporate power, Alfred accumulated something greater: immortality through service. He found peace not in victory over enemies, but in giving away everything he had. Alfred Irénée DuPont passed away in 1935, but unlike many Gilded Age magnates whose names remained only on gravestones, his story did not end with the funeral. Jessie Ball DuPont, the faithful keeper of his will, turned their home into a powerful instrument of good. Today, the name Nemours in America is associated not with gunpowder, explosions, or family scandals, but with one of the largest pediatric healthcare systems in the world. Billions of dollars earned from war and industrial chemistry now work to save lives. The wall with broken glass still stands there in Wilmington. The sharp shards still catch the sun's rays, but now this wall does not divide enemies. It serves as a monument to human resilience. We often look at success stories as profit charts, but Nemours teaches us otherwise. It is a lesson that even the deepest resentment and isolation can become fuel for mercy. Alfred was the real J. Gatsby, a man who built an incredible castle for a dream of love. But while the fictional Gatsby died in a fruitless chase for the past, the real Alfred found the strength within himself to create a future. When you walk through the long corridors of Nemours today, you see not just museum luxury. You see the path of a man who understood the main truth. Fortune truly turns to dust. Palaces decay, velvet rots, and corporations change owners and forget their creators. Only what we give to others is eternal. Alfred Irénée DuPont left us not just an architectural masterpiece, but monumental proof that even from the fragments of a broken heart, one can build a temple that will stand forever. His revenge on the family turned into a gift to humanity, and in this lies his main, final victory.